Well, hello, guys. You're listening to Beauty Bites with Dr. K, Secrets of a Plastic Surgeon. And today on the podcast, let's interview Mike Belkowski. He's one of my good friends. He's CEO and founder of BioLight. And Mike, welcome to the podcast. I'm going to talk all of your accomplishments. But you know why I like Mike is because he's written an amazing book about red light therapy, which literally I read from cover to cover when I first learned about his devices. And he's really like science focused and evidence focused. Love that about you, Mike. Welcome to the podcast.
Dr. K, thanks for having me on again. It's always a pleasure when we can have a fun conversation like this.
Yes, for those of you who don't have a visual, Mike is walking on a treadmill with a podcast microphone in front of him, and he's wearing his blue light blockers. What brand of blue light blockers do you wear?
Raw Optics,
Yes, I love that.
Matt
Yeah.
Maruka, he's the man. Like I had him on my podcast, gosh, a year ago, but you listen to him speak about light and he's like on a whole other level and he's a brilliant guy. His products are quality, love them, and I couldn't advocate for them more. And just blue light blocking in general, like if you don't have to get raw optics, I would highly advocate for them, but just having them because we live in this world where we're constantly bombarded by screens while the sun is up, but even more importantly, while the sun is down, we all like to cozy up and watch some TV or our iPads or what have you at night. And that's what wrecks our circadian rhythm. And we can get into this, but circadian rhythm is the name of the game. And so blue light blocking glasses is one of the easiest and probably least expensive ways to optimize your circadian health, which impacts your mitochondrial function, which we can get into as well.
I love that. I also like raw optics. It's RA optics. But that's another podcast. Today we're going to talk about BioLight and red light therapy. And also I want to dive deep into methylene blue. Actually, the reason I'm having you back on the podcast, and we've done like 2 or 3 podcasts, but I want to learn more about methylene blue. What is it? Why do my mitochondria need it?
Yeah, so just from Jump Street, it's not like we have a methylene blue deficiency in our body. Secondarily, and this kind of is counterintuitive to the health and wellness and longevity space. We're all anti-synthetic, I think, for the most part. Well, methylene blue is a synthetic substance, so it's a very interesting and somewhat polarizing substance or molecule. But once you get to learn how safe it is, how effective it is, what it does for your mitochondria, then it's like one of those things you kind of want to have or need to have for your health and wellness regimen. Do you want the historical perspective or do you just want to jump into the physiology?
I mean, a little history, like I think most people don't know what methylene blue is. It's a
Sure.
dye. Like talk to us about like what it is and who came up with the idea of even ingesting it, or I'm gonna have some dye and drink it.
Well, that's the million-dollar
Paint all
question.
the tissues blue. Like
Right.
it's a really strong, potent dye for histology and medical purposes. And
Right. So it was first synthesized 1885 or so by a German chemist, and it was synthesized for dyeing textiles and like leathers, so like jeans and leathers and books and stuff. A handful of years later, to your point, it was used for microscopy, so staining slides to better see what's underneath there. And when they did that, they did notice that there was a particular bacteria, an organelle, that readily absorbed this blue substance. So methylene blue, of course, is a very beautiful, deep royal blue of sorts. And there was a particular organelle that was really absorbing this. Well, that ended up being the mitochondria. Years later, so like the 1890s or so, um, there was a doctor, and this is where it got its first medical use, used it to treat malaria. How or why he thought methylene blue would be the choice, I don't know, Kay. But regardless, he was able to eradicate
hmm,
um, malaria from people within 48 hours,
wow.
which is pretty amazing, especially like way back then.
Hmm.
And then fast forward to the early 1900s, especially around the World War I era, uh, methylene blue started to be used for psychiatric disorders, mood disorders.
Hmm.
And even it wasn't even necessarily used as the methylene blue wasn't used as the medication. They put methylene blue in the prescription because, of course, when you ingest methylene blue, your urine is going to turn blue or greenish. And so the psychiatrists, they added methylene blue to make sure that their patients were actually taking their prescriptions. So it
Hmm.
wasn't even for the methylene blue purposes at that time. It was to check their urine and make sure the urine was blue. so that
Mhm.
they knew they were taking their prescriptions. Fast forward to the 1980s, 1990s. Now we're starting to see an uptick in research for methylene blue and neurodegeneration, so Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, other forms of dementia, Huntington's disease. 2000 onward, now we're seeing more research in methylene blue for its anti-cancer properties, and more recently, its profound effect on the mitochondria. So that's where we are today. Slowly but surely, there's more research coming out on this substance, which can't be patented. So that's why the FDA wants nothing to do with it or can ban it. It's not a patentable molecule. So that's great for the lay public.
Mhm.
So what does it do? It's a massive, profound antioxidant. So anytime you were talking about antioxidants from a physics perspective, that means you're donating an electron to neutralize a free radical or oxidative stress. So that can be vitamin C, vitamin E, anything that's anti-inflammatory, turmeric. We're in one way or another, at a very basic level, donating electrons to neutralize free radicals. So methylene blue does this at a extremely potent level. And if we get into inside the mitochondria, just to nerd out a little bit on the electron transport chain, the whole role of mitochondria, and we've talked about this before, I think, in regards to red light therapy, but just as a quick review, the whole point of the mitochondria or improving mitochondrial function is to produce energy and biological water. And you need electrons to flow through the electron transport chain to do so. But in order for the electrons to make their way to or not inevitably, but hopefully produce that ATP and biological water, they have to jump across four respiratory proteins. So we can liken this to jumping across four stones to get across a river. And so when your mitochondria are functional, those stones are close together. So it's very easy for the mitochondria to easily jump across efficiently, effectively to produce ATP and water. But whenever we have mitochondrial dysfunction, and this can be from non-native EMFs, this can be from psychological stress, this can be from a poor diet, poor sleep, poor circadian rhythm, those stones or the mitochondria in the electron transport chain, those respiratory proteins, get stretched out. So now there's a greater distance between those rocks. And a lot of times the electrons don't make it. And so we have what's called electron spillage. And I say all of this because that's the number one source of free radicals and oxidative stress.
Hmm.
So
It's
back to
our own
methylene blue,
internal, it's our own internal free radicals that are
1000%. And
not the external.
that's where the free radical theory of aging comes from. It's directly related to this issue of this electron spillage,
Hmm.
where electrons can make the jump. And then we have, in the presence of inflammation, that turns into oxidative stress. And so essentially everything is related to excess free radicals and oxidative stress and inflammation.
Mm-hmm.
So again, back to methylene blue, and even looking at a macro perspective, Kay, that's the crux of health. And that's why the mitochondria are so important for virtually all aspects of health and wellness. Because from a bioenergetic perspective, the more energy you can produce per cell, the healthier you're going to be. That's undeniable. And the mitochondria produce 95% of all of the energy in our body. So that's why the mitochondria are so important. So back to methylene blue, or let's go back to the electron transport chain just for one more moment. So not only are there issues with the respiratory proteins getting stretched out, but sometimes there can be blockages at any one of those four respiratory proteins. And when there's a blockage, that's where electrons can build up, build up, build up, and inevitably those will spill out and lead to excess free radicals and oxidative stress. So what methylene blue can do is donate electrons to any one of those respiratory proteins, especially one and three. If there's a blockage, they can donate their electrons and then resolve the blockage issue. And that, in that sense, it's minimizing free radical leakage, oxidative stress. And another important aspect of methylene blue from an antioxidant perspective is it's a cyclic and regenerative antioxidant. And this means that not only can it donate electrons and accept them back and do this multiple times, thousands of times, but it can do so without degrading.
Hmm.
Compared to something like vitamin C or vitamin E, when they start donating their electrons, they automatically begin degrading. So
Mm-hmm.
methylene blue is very potent in this sense in that it can donate, accept, donate, accept, on and on and on and on. So
Mm-hmm.
another benefit of methylene blue, and maybe this is where some people heard about it, is it's a major antiviral. So
Hmm.
it became huge and highly popular during COVID. Within a month or two after COVID coming out, there was research showing how methylene blue could eradicate or reverse symptoms of COVID. And now there's research coming out to its benefit in fighting long COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you're not into the wellness and longevity benefits of methylene blue, I think it still behooves people to have some methylene blue in their cabinet for when they do get sick, that they appropriately dose it, and you can either completely eradicate the sickness from ever coming to fruition, or if the sickness does happen, you can at the very least shorten the span of which you are sick. And I've lived that multiple times now. Using methylene blue when I'm sick.
And
Um,
then how did people even decide that this was a reasonable idea? Isn't methylene blue labeled as a toxin and a poison and not for human consumption?
no. And I think that brings up the point of not all methylene blue is created equal. There's methylene blue used for microscopy. There's methylene blue used for cleaning aquariums. Now there's
Yeah.
pharmaceutical grade methylene blue, which can be ingested.
Okay.
Not all methylene blue is created equal. And so if you do start looking into the methylene blue space, you want to make sure that, because anyone can say that it's pharmaceutical grade, and I've seen this from companies out there, um, that it's pharmaceutical grade, but when you look at the certificate of analysis, it's a little shady. And I actually had someone reach out to me, um, comparing, they're asking, about my BioBlue products relative to these cheaper Amazon products. They received the certificate of analysis from this company, which isn't posted readily on the product page. They had to ask for it. But when we
Mm-hmm.
were looking at it, the um, the metal content, the heavy metal content was it was either 5 or 10 times higher than the methylene blue product, and both were quote unquote pharmaceutical grade. So to your point, you do have to be careful. And just like with any supplement, you need to do your due diligence to make sure you're getting a high quality product because, and just like food, anytime you're putting something into your body, you want it to be the highest quality possible.
Mm-hmm.
But in a nutshell, methylene blue in a pharmaceutical grade is extremely safe and efficacious and effective, um, because a pharmaceutical grade should have extremely low heavy metal content, solvents, and all that stuff. And then if we get into leucomethylene blue, um, which we can talk about if you want, that's a reduced version of methylene blue. So from a chemical perspective, anytime something's reduced, you're adding electrons. So leucomethylene blue is uh, has a higher antioxidant capacity. And from a biological perspective, when you consume methylene blue, your body, your liver breaks it down, reduces it into leucomethylene blue. So it's actually leucomethylene blue, which is being used in your body for the beneficial purposes.
Mm-hmm.
Leuco means white, just like white blood cells, leukocytes. So it's a much more it's not transparent, but it's a much less blue version of methylene blue.
Hmm.
Um, so if you were to take leucomethylene blue instead of methylene blue, also by it being reduced, there's even less heavy metals, less inorganic solvents and all that stuff. So it's actually even a cleaner version than methylene blue. But by consuming leucomethylene blue, instead of waiting 60 to 90 minutes for the methylene blue to break down in your body, it's instantly bioavailable because again, that's what methylene blue eventually gets turned into anyway. So it's instantly bioavailable, has a higher antioxidant capacity, and it's cleaner. And
Mm-hmm.
so the only issue with leucomethylene blue is it's twice as expensive as methylene blue. So it's a pretty can be a pretty hefty price, but there are some pretty nice benefits to leucomethylene blue.
Are you manufacturing that at this point?
Yes.
You are. Okay, awesome. And how should one dive into taking methylene blue? Is it diluted with a little bit of water? Is it taken straight up, right out of the droplets?
So you can do it either or. And we just released a couple of months ago a capsule version of both
Oh, nice.
methylene blue and leucomethylene blue. But for liquid versions, to your point, you can take it straight in the mouth, but that's just going to heavily dye or stain your
Oh,
tongue, your teeth, and whatnot. So that's where you see those uh, pictures on Instagram of people with their Smurf tongues and whatever. If you don't mind that, or you kind of like that, then you can just go straight in the mouth. If you
yeah.
want to dilute it, what I've been doing is,
I don't see
um,
blue teeth, so you must be not doing that.
well, I mean, you do get the Smurf tongue and teeth, but like it eventually goes away.
Mhm.
There's been something called a skin redox test where you can take your methylene blue, put one drop on your skin, and you can do this in different parts of your body. And if the blue disappears within 6 hours, that means the tissue below the surface was deprived of oxygen and was more or less mitochondrial dysfunction or dysfunctional mitochondria. If you do that drop of blue and it's there post 6 hours, that means the tissue below is pretty healthy. So it's kind of an interesting test to do there. But the traditional dosage for let's just call it general mitochondrial health and wellness is 10 to 15 milligrams twice a day because it has a 12-hour half-life. So if you're doing a liquid version, almost all of them are 1% solution. Some are 2%, but most are 1%. And if that's the case, 10 to 15 milligrams would be 20 to 30 drops. So you do that once or twice a day, whatever you're trying to accomplish. Again, you can go straight in the mouth or you can dilute that in water. And I've heard that using orange juice actually is effective at minimizing the teeth staining. You can do it in your coffee. You can do it in whatever. Um, and you can just chug it down straight like that. Or to further minimize the teeth and tongue staining, use a straw because then that's going to bypass your teeth. And as you're sucking it down at a fast rate, it's going to, barely touch your tongue. So I think from a liquid perspective, diluting it in like 4 to 5 ounces of water using a straw is the best way to minimize the staining. But like I mentioned, we also came out with a capsular version where if you're it's tinctured, so each capsule is 5 milligrams. So to get that traditional dosage of 10 milligrams twice a day, you just do 2 capsules twice a day, and you got your dosage there.
Hmm. I love it. So what can the consumer expect when they're taking methylene blue? Like extremely amazing energy, mental clarity, any longevity benefits?
So yeah, I guess I didn't even like cover all of the benefits of methylene blue. There's quite a bit to talk about. One of the main benefits, especially for those that are red light therapy enthusiasts or just light enthusiasts, is it's a major synergist with red light therapy. That's really why I got into it a year and a half ago, from a business perspective, because it's like I'm doing red light therapy. Oh, here's this
Yeah.
other safe and effective thing that boosts mitochondrial health. But hey, it's also a major synergist with red light therapy. So the peak absorption of methylene blue is, I believe, 665, which is almost dead in the middle of red light, meaning if you have methylene blue in your system, that dark blue pigment is going to accept or
Mm,
accrue more red photons, which are going to be turned into electrons. More electrons to your mitochondria means more ATP in water production, which is the name of the game.
hmm.
So it's a major synergist with red light therapy. Like I mentioned, it takes about 60 to 90 minutes for the methylene blue to break down and reach that peak plasma level in your body. So if you wanted to pair this with red light therapy, ideally you would take your methylene blue 60 to 90 to minutes to 2 hours later, do your red light therapy session, and you should get more bang for your buck from a red light therapy session perspective. Um,
Well, you're a red light therapy expert. When people are buying red lights out there, I get these questions a lot. What wavelength and frequency should they be looking for? And how can you tell if something's quality device versus Amazon junk?
um, so as long as you have red light, as long as you have near infrared light, that's what matters. So most devices are 660 for red and then 850 or 880 for near infrared. And I honestly don't know where those came from. And when I've talked to like photobiomodulation researchers and experts, like Dr. Praveen Irani, he's been on my podcast 3 times now. Um, and he's told me like he doesn't even know where that came from necessarily because the research just started using red wavelengths. And for whatever reason, 660 was like one of the first red wavelengths used. So that's what everyone used afterward. There's really no rhyme or reason other than it was the first, so everyone followed suit, and thus the products copied what the research is doing, which makes sense if that's what the research is bearing out, like positive results, then they want to copy what the research is doing. Um, so I say all of that to say I wouldn't get too hooked on the wavelengths. If you're seeing red, there's red light. Like you can't see red and there's not red. I mean, your eyes are picking up those wavelengths for a reason because it's red light. Same thing with near infrared. You want it to be in that 800 nanometer zone. Um, there's less research once you get into the 900s and thousands. Perhaps that's more so in the brain or transcranial photobiomodulation because you need to penetrate that skull. And the longer the wavelength, the deeper it penetrates, which is why red light really only treats the skin. Near infrared treats deeper than the skin
Mhm.
in general. But so
And do you
wavelengths
want
are
to
what
look for a device that has both red
on a
light
device that
and
has
near
both.
infrared? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you're getting a mask because you just want to treat your face, then all you need is red. There's no need for near infrared necessarily. But if you're trying to treat or get a panel or get like a full body device, of course you want both because you want the ability to treat superficial and deep. And then another thing to mention about the wavelengths is they do the exact same thing, just at different levels in the body. So it's not like red and near infrared have different attributes. They
Hmm.
do the same thing, just different depths in the body.
Hmm.
So wavelengths, I wouldn't get too hung up on that. But what you do want to look for is the light irradiance measurement and that it's third party tested. I don't know if we talked about this on prior episodes with you, Dr. K, but um, the vast majority of products on the market are not third party tested. And it's been proven, and I could send you the link, or if I could throw up a screenshot, I would. It's
Hmm.
been proven that even these popular, quote unquote, popular companies, red light therapy companies, if they're not third party tested, the light irradiance they're purporting on their product pages is inherently false and it's grossly over embellished from anywhere, meaning you're buying a device. They're saying, for example, the light irradiance is 100 milliwatts per centimeter squared, when in reality, it's in the 80s or 70s. And so there's been individuals that have tested a slew of products from the market, and it's anywhere from 35 to 250%. The light radiance is lower than what they're putting on their product page, meaning you're buying a product that has, what did I say, 35% to 250% less than what you paid for. So from an integrity standpoint, it's not great. And an equally important standpoint is if you're trying to produce a protocol or trying to dictate the length of your treatment, one of the major factors that you're utilizing to determine your protocol is the light irradiance. So if it's false, your protocol is going to be built on faulty information, and you're not going to have an accurate protocol. So there's a couple of issues with that. So the biggest thing I think from a consumer standpoint is that your product is third party tested because I think that's where the whole industry needs to go, so the
Hmm.
consumers can have an apples to apples comparison. Because right now,
Mm.
it's apples to oranges because you have some companies, very few companies that are third party tested. Everyone else is not. And
Hmm.
so when you look at a BioLight panel, for example, the light ratings is going to be in the 60s, which seems low relative to what the market is showing, like 100 or 150. Some people are even saying 220
Hmm.
milliwatts per centimeter squared, which is asinine. I mean, your treatments would be seconds if the panel was actually producing that much. Um, and so to your point, I think you mentioned my book earlier, Kay. I don't know if I've sent you the newest edition, and if I haven't, I will, where I just released it this summer. And
Hmm.
inside of it,
No, I haven't
I
read it.
have, yeah, I've released what I've called this red light therapy protocol ecosystem where um, you can develop a protocol based on the device you have, based on what you're trying to treat. So it's a very nuanced approach. Whereas before, if you remember the protocols I gave in the book, they were predicated around a certain light irradiance. So I gave you some like a spectrum of a dosage, of a duration of treatment. Um, I gave you a spectrum of distance. So all of this was it was good for the moment for the 3 or 4 years ago that because there was nothing else out there for developing protocols. But over the years, I've gotten questions time after time like, I have a product from a different company that has a different light irradiance. How do I convert your protocols to something else? Or even within BioLight, different products have different light irradiances.
Mm-hmm.
It became clear to me that there had to be some way for people to convert or modulate their protocol based on the irradiance of their device, the strength of the light. And so that's what I've produced. Anyone can use this calculator. It's on the BioLight website. The tab is protocols, and you'll have access to this calculator where you only type in two um two variables. One is the light irradiance, and that's why I'm so passionate about products being third party tested, because even if you're just a consumer wanting to produce an accurate protocol for yourself, let alone a physician or like a med spa, and you're trying to tweak your red light therapy protocols for someone else, you need the light irradiance to be third party tested. So the two variables are light irradiance and then the dosage, which is measured in joules per centimeter squared, and all of that is determined by the research.
Mm-hmm.
So part of the ebook includes this compendium of a couple hundred conditions that so I went through all of the photobiomodulation research, found the research that had positive results, and then in those articles that listed the dosage, I included those in this compendium. So, for example, arthritis might be, I don't have it in front of me. Let's just call it like 5 joules per centimeter squared.
Mm-hmm.
Thyroid is 3. A different type of pain is 15. So, in that way, when you plug that into the calculator, then it'll spit out the duration of your treatment
Mm-hmm.
in seconds and in minutes. So, in
Well,
that sense,
nice.
again,
That's
anyone with any device can get an accurate protocol based on what they're trying to treat. So it just becomes much more specific in that sense.
that's so amazing. You should advertise that more. I'm sure people will get so much benefit out of it.
I mean, hopefully I mean, again, this is just the first time. It's almost like in its beta version. I'm still waiting to get more feedback from people, but it's certainly a much more individualized um way to produce a protocol for sure.
Yeah, I was recently reading about red light therapy and how patients with Hashimoto's thyroiditis and other thyroid autoimmune conditions literally can have reversal of their thyroid disease from red light therapy on their thyroid. Like, why is that not
Like
known
within
more
eight or
about?
10 weeks.
Yes, that's crazy. Like here people are taking major drugs and on thyroid supplement for life, and you can actually reverse this problem with red light therapy.
And I almost guarantee you the results would be better and quicker if methylene blue was added to the regimen.
So I interrupted you. We were talking about how red light can work synergistically with methylene blue. So it's depending on the fluence of your device and, the energy uptake, how does that supercharge that electron chain, methylene blue?
Um, so again, from the red light, from the synergistic perspective, that dark blue pigment allows your um wherever that blue pigment is to absorb more red photons than you would otherwise, thus giving you more electrons to put through the electron transport chain to produce ATP and water efficiently. Another interesting aspect or couple aspects of methylene blue is when you ingest it, the methylene blue has this innate ability to go wherever it is most needed in the body. And so this is going to be precancerous or cancerous cells. Wherever there's most metabolic or mitochondrial dysfunction, the methylene blue is going to go there, which is quite interesting and profound. After that, the vast majority of it will make it into your central nervous system and into your brain, because that's the most mitochondrial dense tissue in the body. The neurons are. So that's why we get all of these mood and neurodegenerative benefits from methylene blue, is because that's where there's the most mitochondria, which means that's where there's the most this kind of a double-edged sword, because that's where there's the most likelihood for mitochondrial dysfunction. And in the most recent years, the last couple of years, there's been some really interesting research with both methylene blue and leucomethylene blue in its ability to uh, get rid of neurofibrillary tangles. So you're able to like reverse these signs and symptoms of Parkinson's um, and other forms of dementia. So Parkinson's and Alzheimer's especially. So there's a lot of
Parkinson's, really?
So there's a lot of massive potential with methylene blue and neurodegeneration or just brain health. I've heard, and this isn't the research as well, but I've also heard through customers, friends, family, just how it boosts their mood, reduces
Mhm.
stress, reduces anxiety and depression. And so the very first time I took methylene blue, which was early last summer, so about a year and a half ago, the first couple of times I took it, I could literally feel my brain buzzing, just like there was an enhanced energy in my brain, which I found quite interesting. Um, and just like red light therapy, it's one of those things. And anytime you're doing anything to improve your mitochondrial function, this can be grounding. This can just be getting more sunshine. Um, you're going to notice you're going to have the most significant, tangible feelings because you have the most room for improvement, right? So
Mhm.
when you're trying to heal for something or your body is maybe not riddled with mitochondrial dysfunction, but it's the most mitochondrial dysfunction you're going to have because you're going to start implementing things potentially like red light therapy or methylene blue or um, PEMF mats or sauna, hyperbaric oxygen. Anything you do for the first handful of times, you're going to notice or have these physical or tangible symptoms. After that, as you get closer to, I guess if we want to call it homeostasis, the closer you get to that, um, the less you're going to notice. And I think some people, of course, we all like to feel good things. So once that feeling goes away, it's like, well, is this really working for me?
Mm. Mhm.
I actually want to kind of flip the script on that mentality and tell everyone that's an amazing place to be. And that's where a lot of people want to be because that's maintenance phase for your mitochondria. And that means you're in a preventive measure, in a preventive phase. So now you can do these things like red light therapy or other mitochondrial modalities, we'll call them, as a preventive measure to improve your health span. So that's a great place to be, I think.
I think so. I think you're absolutely right. I started NAD and NMR supplements this year, precursor stuff, and then you do hit a plateau. We're like, is it still working? I don't know.
Hmm.
But maybe it is a great place to be um, for patients who want to, or people who want to start taking methylene blue. Like we were going to mention some of the symptoms that you feel, like increased energy, and what other things can they expect?
Increased energy, increased focus and concentration, boosted mood. Those are the most obvious ones for sure. Um, Improved sleep, maybe reduced pain, because anytime we're inducing electrons, that's also going to reduce inflammation. Inflammation is basically a lack of electrons, especially chronic inflammation. So if we can
Mhm.
bring inflammation, or sorry, if we can bring electrons into the situation, that's effectively anti-inflammatory. That's why grounding is such a wonderful anti-inflammatory modality of sorts. It's because you're absorbing those electrons from the earth and magnetism into your body. And so if you
Mhm.
have any pain, if you do have any inflammation, the electrons are going to basically neutralize the excess protons, if you will. So reduced pain can be another one with methylene blue. But the energy, improved sleep, improved mentation, just concentration, focus, improved mood, those are the most obvious ones right off the bat.
And longevity wise, are there any long-term studies that show people or like what is actually the clinical testing and any published medical studies out there about methylene blue?
Yeah, there's quite a few. And again, a lot of it is centered around neurodegeneration. A lot of
Hmm.
it is centered around things like cyanide poisoning, methemoglobinemia.
Hmm.
And these are things that directly affect the electron transport chain. So cyanide poisoning, I forget exactly what respiratory protein it's closing down. It might be three, but that's what the poison is doing is it's shutting down um, that third respiratory protein, which completely disallows energy production from happening. And we all know what happens with cyanide poisoning. You're basically like knocked out. And that's how important energy production is in our body. So so again, that's where a lot of the research is. Neurodegeneration. Like I said, there's some anti-cancer stuff coming out. There's one study in particular that's about anti-aging and methylene blue, and it's covering things I believe like especially skin health. So that's why we introduced leucomethylene blue into our skin product is because it has amazing anti-aging benefits for the skin, especially mitigating and reversing the damage from excess UV radiation. UV radiation itself, in my opinion, is not bad. It's when it becomes excessive. There's a lot of health benefits that come from being exposed to UV light. That's a
Mhm.
whole other conversation. But again, methylene blue plays a role there for your skin. Wherever, and theoretically, but I think this will be borne out in the research, anywhere there's mitochondria, just like red light therapy, the red light therapy research is showing, anywhere there's mitochondria and you can get methylene blue there, there will be a benefit.
Mhm.
It's just a matter of time for the research to catch up to that. And just another anecdote I'll give, and this is specific to like the power of the photodynamic activity of methylene blue and red light therapy. I interviewed Dr. Yoshi Ram, who is a osteopathic physician in California, and he's been using IV methylene blue for years and years with his patients. And
Wow.
the story that he gave was he uses it all the time for UTIs. So he'll do the methylene blue IV, and then he'll irradiate their bladder with red light, and the UTI virtually just disappears. And so I think that just really speaks to the power of those two being used in concert together.
That's such an interesting modality, like to take a dose of that and just supercharge your own immune system. Actually, I'm sure there's some immune benefit too.
1000%. I mean, as an antiviral for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
So I love that idea. So I don't know, I was initially a little freaked out about the thought of it just because in medicine I have used it for severe fungal infections, like we use it in the ear canal when when you get a terrible fungal mycosis or, horrible swimmer's ear, it stains your ear blue. And people tell them like wear an old t-shirt, put something
yep,
on
yep.
your pillowcase, because it just keeps leaching out of you. And I think people used to use it for railroad ties, like those old wood ties that had fungal infection and rot. They would stain them
Interesting.
with, yeah, methylene blue would kind of like cure that and take that away so you didn't have to tear up the whole railroad. So it's like a super potent molecule, but I just hadn't really thought of it in terms of human use. And it's fascinating all the things that you've discovered. And then does this kind of go along with C60, which I've also heard about being very, very potent as in terms of being an antioxidant and electron carrier?
Yes. And so that's part of what I have dubbed as a term I've coined, which is the mitochondrial triad. And they're the three, we'll call them modalities that I believe are the most effective, efficient, and efficacious ways to improve your mitochondrial function. And this is not to take away from the foundations, which are, getting out in nature, grounding, full spectrum sunlight, um, things like gratitude journaling or meditation, like all of these things. Those are foundational, and most of them are free. So like that's where the foundation should be built. But again, to really boost and really heal your mitochondria, these are the three things I believe, again, are most effective, efficacious, and safe. That's red light therapy, of course. And then, like we've talked about, methylene blue and carbon 60 or C60 is the third one. And it's another thing that's extremely safe, very low risk, very high reward. And I would put methylene blue um, in that column as well.
Are you
So
on some C60?
what's that?
Are you taking C60 as well?
Oh yeah, we're producing it. It's one of our products.
Oh, okay. Well, now we have another podcast to do. I got to go read about
I mean,
C60.
yeah, so this is a whole other conversation, but in a nutshell, and the reason I pick these three is not only are they effective at what they do and all that good stuff, but they're not redundant in how they help the mitochondria. It wouldn't
Yeah,
make sense to do the same
they're
thing twice. So they're all
synergistic.
right. So they're all different. The way C60 works essentially is by cleaning up the external environment of the mitochondria. So it essentially and this is a not politically correct way to say it, but it basically mops up the free radicals and oxidative stress. If you were to interview, and you probably should interview Chris Burris, who is the co-founder of SES Research, and they
Hmm.
produce like all of the C60 both for industrial and human consumption. Um, but very quickly, I know we're getting short on time. C60 took off because of this study in 2012 out of Paris. And Chris Burris and his company SES Research, they're the ones that provided the C60 for this research, for this study. But what they did is they had control rats that just lived their normal lives, and then they had rats that consumed C60 and olive oil. C60 must be suspended in oil. It can't be taken with water. That's apparently toxic. So it has to be in oil. And so the rats that just, the control rats, live their normal life, live their normal lifespan, and their bodies were riddled with tumors when they died.
Hmm.
The rats that consumed the C60 with uh, olive oil, all other things being equal, their environment and everything else was equal. Those rats lived 90% longer, 90. And when they did die, their bodies had no tumors.
Hmm.
So that's really where C60 for longevity and health span and anti-aging really took off. As far as mechanisms, they're still trying to figure that out because I mean C60 was discovered in I think the 80s, Nobel Prize given in 95. And again, that 2012 study that really took off for its potential in human consumption, which ultimately began in like 2017, 18 or so. But what it does again is externally mopping up the free radicals. So it doesn't neutralize the free radicals themselves. What it does is when there's excessive free radicals, it will handcuff those free radicals to itself because
Hmm.
our endogenous antioxidant system will come and take care of them when they're done doing their duties, and that's melatonin and glutathione. But when there's excessive free radicals, we don't have enough melatonin and glutathione to take care of those. That's where the C60 comes in, handcuffs those free radicals. And again, when they're able to, the glutathione and melatonin then comes in, uh, takes those free radicals from the C60 and disposes of them, if you will. And so one C60 molecule, I believe, can handcuff about 30 to 40 free radicals per molecule, which may or may not seem like a lot. But what Chris Burris told me when I interviewed him is that one drop of a C60 product like oil, there's 420 times more C60 molecules in that one drop than there are cells in your body.
Hmm.
So then you multiply that 30 to 40 free radicals handcuffed per C60 molecule, and that number goes through the roof, right? So now you can see the profound impact of C60 really minimizing excessive free radicals and oxidative stress. And so from a macroscopic perspective, when there's excessive free radicals that lead to oxidative stress, that oxidative stress leads to mitochondrial dysfunction. And remember, mitochondrial dysfunction and that stretched respiratory proteins with those free radicals spilling out, that leads to oxidative stress. So it's the situation where um, the oxidative stress leads to mitochondrial dysfunction, which leads to more oxidative stress, which leads to more mitochondria. So by breaking that cycle with something like C60, you're providing an environment for the mitochondria to thrive and reverse back to a more normalized, healthy mitochondria, which that alone will help minimize the excess free radical production and oxidative stress. There's other things going on as well. C60 is so small, it can literally get inside of the mitochondria, just like methylene blue can. So I'm sure over the years we'll learn more things in more ways that C60 impacts the mitochondria. But for the time being, it's called the BOSS theory, buffering oxidative stress system theory, as far as how it handcuffs free radicals and then allows the other antioxidants to come by and take care of them. That's the predominant theory right now.
Hmm. That's very impressive. I mean, there's so many different theories of aging. Why do we age? How do we age? Is it the informational theory that our DNA breaks down and we don't transmit the blueprints very well? Or is it this oxidative damage, electron transport issue? What are your thoughts on?
I think minimal has to do with the nuclear DNA.
Mhm.
It by and large, and that's why I'm so passionate and bullish on mitochondrial function is because I do really think that's root cause, root level of the vast majority of modern diseases and cancers. Yes, there will be a small percentage that is directly tied to issues with the nuclear DNA, but the mitochondrial DNA is what's most vulnerable and what will lead to degeneration, diseases, cancers much more readily, much more easily than damage to the nuclear DNA. And so when we have excessive free radicals, when we have oxidative stress, that's another issue is they attack or they degrade the mitochondrial DNA. That's also what leads to mitochondrial dysfunction. And again, mitochondria, um, there can be hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of mitochondria per cell. Cells make up tissues, tissues make up organs, organs make up systems, and systems make up the body. So at a root level, root cause, that's what I mean is the mitochondria is that root level. So anything you can do to improve mitochondrial function will improve your overall health.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that that big picture zoom out is important. And then understanding like the importance of the mitochondrial health is critical. Like all the things that you're talking about, red light, methylene blue, the leuco blue. Well, what's it called again?
Methylene blue.
Leucomethylene blue. Those, I mean, all of these are designed to improve the health of the mitochondria.
Yes, and while that is important, Kay, I think it's equally important to mention taking away things that are bombarding your mitochondria may be more important because that's tantamount to saying you're going to be a night shift worker, but you're going to out diet how that's going to wreck your metabolism. Meaning, if you have one foot on the gas and one foot on the brakes, what are you really accomplishing? Meaning, if you're improving your mitochondrial function, yet you're still surrounded by non-native EMFs constantly, you're never getting outside, you're always under fluorescent lights, you're eating processed foods, you're always stressed, you're getting poor sleep. It doesn't matter if you take methylene blue C60 do red light therapy. That's going to only improve you so much. So I say all of that because the mitochondria are ultimately environmental sensors. They're sensitive to wherever your body is in space and what things are affecting it. And so again, non-native EMFs, that's Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, 5G. And so that's why living in a metropolitan city is one of the worst things you can do for your mitochondria because it's a high density of people
Hmm.
and people have a bunch of devices that are hooked up to, again, all of these non-native EMFs. And non-native EMFs are essentially a microwave for your body. So then we get into the topic of dehydration. What happens when you put a steak into a microwave? It gets very dry. So the exact same thing is happening to our bodies when they're being bombarded by, if you're always carrying a cell phone in your pocket, if you put your laptop on your lap, if you have your phone close to you at night when you sleep, how close are you relative to the closest 5G tower? You're literally dehydrating your body. And remember, mitochondrial function is producing water. So this dehydration is because your mitochondria is becoming dysfunctional. They're not producing water as much as they should. And if you look at a picture of a brain, a hydrated brain versus a dehydrated brain, it'll knock your socks off because the dehydrated brain is so much smaller, literally.
Hmm.
So that's what's happening all across our body when we're cooking ourselves essentially in this non-native EMFs. So that's just one example of like the environment and how it affects our whole health and how it affects the mitochondria. So these are things people have to consider is you can't get well in the environment where you got sick. So even from this perspective, Kay, things like red light therapy, methylene blue, C60, again, they'll help mitigate that damage. But until you start getting out of the environment or removing these negative environmental factors, you're only going to get so well. So
Yeah.
removing block is as important as adding these cool things to your regimen.
Yeah. It's important to like change your lifestyle and like go back to the old school of like nature and outdoors and sunlight and
Yeah.
healthy, healthy living. Like you said, you can't reverse it all with pills and potions. But I think this is a fascinating discussion. I really encourage people that are listening out there to take inventory of your own life. What are all the oxidative stresses that are going on for you and how can you combat them? And Mike, where can people find you and the amazing methylene blue?
So you can check me out. I'm going forward, Kay. Like that's one of my missions for 2025 is to really start putting out consistent education on my social medias centered around all of the stuff we're talking about mitochondria. Yeah, a lot of it's going to be red light, methylene blue C60, but it's also going to be things like we talked about as far as the impacts of grounding, the impacts of magnetism, just other ways to improve your mitochondrial function. Really, just type in my name to social media. There's not too many people with the last name Belkowski. predominantly on Instagram right now and LinkedIn. My company BioLight is basically biolight.shop on all social media, and that's actually the website as well, biolight.shop, not .com. And that's where the methylene blue product can be found. It's called BioBlue. We offer 4 different types of the liquid version. There's one that's pure methylene blue, one that's pure leucomethylene blue, and then one that's a 50-50 blend of that. And that's called sustained release. So this
Hmm.
is complete theoretical, okay, but like we talked about, it takes a little bit of time for your body to break down that methylene blue, like a couple of hours almost.
Yeah.
Whereas Leuco is instantly bioavailable. So
Mm.
this BioBlue SR, the sustained release, theoretically, when you consume it, since it's a 50-50 blend, you're going to get that instant hit of the leucomethylene blue. And then a couple hours later, as your body breaks down the methylene blue into leucomethylene blue, then it'll be utilized then. So that's where you get this nice consistent flow of energy. And especially for people, it's almost like a nootropic because it just gives you a more consistent energy for your brain. So there's that one. And then one that's called BioBlue Calm, which incorporates 6 herbs and minerals to really help reduce cortisol, improve GABA in your brain, tap into your parasympathetic nervous system. So that's a really great one to use before going to bed. Um, and then there's 2 capsule versions, one that's methylene blue, one that's the leucomethylene blue.
This is amazing information. You definitely have to send me some leucomethylene blue to try, or maybe
Yeah,
I can.
definitely.
You
And one
sent
thing
me
we
a
didn't talk
bottle of
about,
the blue, but I've been worried about the blue tongue and the blue teeth, so I want
yeah,
to
that's
try
where the
the
capsules come
capsule.
into play. Easy to travel with, and you minimize the staining. And then
Exactly.
maybe we'll table this for our next conversation, Kay. But the red light therapy toothbrush we just released, I mean, we could go into I mean, that's a whole other topic, like I said, but the oral health benefits of red and blue light. And so that's our newest product that we released a couple of weeks or a couple of months ago. It's called the Illume. But if you talk to a biological dentist like Dr. Kelly Blodgett up in Portland or Dr. Dominic Nischwitz over in Germany, the impact of your oral health on your entire health is undeniable. I like it's one of the maybe the number one place to start with your overall health is your mouth.
It's so
And,
true.
and there's just so many health benefits to red and blue light. So this sonic toothbrush incorporates the red and blue light into the toothbrush head. So it's a low-hanging fruit way to incorporate light therapy into your daily regimen without having to change anything other than utilizing this toothbrush instead of your typical toothbrush.
Well, I think you're just an amazing individual. I'm so glad I know you, and I can't wait for you to come visit me in LA, or else I gotta come
I
out
know, I know.
days.
Next time I come down there, I'll let you know.
I would love that. That's it for now, guys. Thanks so much for joining in. I hope you're learning so much information about, it's not just about staying beautiful in this world, it's longevity, health and wellness, and like doing things to make sure you're vital at every age. That's what's critical. So I'm so appreciative of speakers like Mike, and hopefully you guys will incorporate all of this into your regimens to stay healthy, happy, and beautiful. That's it for now, guys. Don't forget to find me on my Instagram. It's Beauty by Dr. K, DRKAY. And our website is the same as beautybydrk.com, where you can find other great products for your health, like our beauty greens, our collagen peptides, and things you can do for internal radiance. That's it for now, guys. Stay beautiful.